Welcome to Tea Time with Shayleigh and Amber. I'm Shayleigh Evans, and I'm a life coach for pets and their people. I'm a truth seeker, and it's my passion to empower others and to give animals a voice along the way.
I'm Amber Lydic, and I've been a performance horse trainer focused on behavioral issues for over 20 years. My current passion is creating impactful in-person and online events and collaborating with professionals to be on the leading edge of positive change in the horse industry.
We are two friends invested in theta healing, belief system work, animal communication, and any resources that benefit human-animal partnerships. So turn up the volume and let's dive into the Great Awakening, brought to you by our horses. Hello and welcome to the podcast. Today we are talking about thresholds in many different ways, and why some of us might push horses to their breaking point before they listen. Like, why do some of us need those moments where we push our horses until we get bucked off or we hit those breaking points for us to listen? And also, why we do that to ourselves in our regular life, because so many of us like have to hold it all together until we can't, and then we get sick or we hit our breaking point. And like, why is that? And what inspired this conversation is that I've had several people kind of reaching out knowing that their horses are traumatized, or they're like bringing forward things that the horses are doing that makes the person know that something is wrong. Like, they're either like bolting at jumps or bucking or rearing or throwing people off or like seriously injuring people. And I was telling Amber, it's like kind of interesting to me because they're like, I really want to get to the bottom of this. I need to know what's going on with the horse. Here's all the problems. And it's like a list of like serious problems, like this horse is really saying, I'm not okay with this for whatever reason. And then several times recently, I've got like an email back where they're like, oh, it escalated, it got worse. And my mind is questioning why someone would keep riding them if the issue was already such a big thing. And I think sometimes we have this belief of like, I just have to get them to the other side, or um like my experience with them is going to be different than the experience they had with other people. Or I think sometimes in order to justify continuing going, especially when I talk with people who are trying horses, is they're like, I want to help them and their intentions are good, but the horse, if it has enough trauma or enough pain or whatever, like, you can be well intentioned all day long, but the horse is still like screaming at you for help, and they don't know that, or they don't recognize the same time space reality as we do, where it's like, okay, we have 3 weeks and then I got to send you back. I'm trying to, work things out or whatever. So it's just kind of a fascinating topic.
Yeah, I think it's that intention versus impact thing where both can be true. Like you can be well intended, but and the impact it's having on the other person or horse or animal is not good. And if they're communicating that to you, you have a decision to make to honor that and do not keep doing the same thing that you're doing over and over. Definition of insanity. And try something different, get curious and look deeper into it. And I do know it's like there's this weird culture that is in the horse land where it's like ride them through it. And I think the reason people will put multiple different riders on these horses is because they think, well, maybe it's me. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's me. And sometimes it is. But if it happens to multiple people, then most likely it's something going on for the horse. It's almost interesting because you'll be in these horse groups and you'll have someone bring up, well, maybe it's pain. And it's sometimes a little like scoffed at. And people get a
Mm-hmm.
little shamed for that, which is so freaking weird, right? Like, what is that? Where people will be like, I'm so tired of people saying, like, it's probably pain. It's probably the horse is an asshole and it needs to be ridden through. And it's like, wait, what? Like, what? What? Why is that a bad suggestion? Or they'll say, yeah, the vet said they're sound. I've had all of the quote unquote health issues looked at. They're all good. It's behavioral. Even that, there are so many things that can go undiagnosed. And I don't want people to go so far into, oh my gosh, there is definitely something wrong, because people can do that too. And then they create an excuse as to why. So, like we were just saying before we got on this call, it's really difficult to talk about this sometimes because you can't really generalize any of this, because every situation, between the dynamic of the person and the horse on its own, the health of the person, the health of the horse, like there's so many different things that go into it. But if there's like a balance that you can have where, I think if you just first start, I think everything, if you start with the nervous system and at
Mhm.
least get that regulated, then you get a more true story about what's going on for the horse, lameness wise, and also for the person, especially after something has happened, like you've been bucked off or your horse bolted or whatever it is. Once that happens, your nervous system is fired up, and then, you know, and then you're trying again and again, and then you're being told push through that, fake it till you make it, like that kind of thing that gets told to you as you're growing up or when you're learning to ride. And that goes into the culture again of no, just get on, and or get back on once you fall off, or these like weird things where it's like why is that necessary? The horse is not learning that they can buck you off. I mean, if you're speaking strictly from like what happened was there was something wrong and then the problem was solved. The horse is not thinking what I need to do is buck people off. It's like having a response to something going on in its body, and then that thing stops when it does a certain thing. It's like the same thing that people do. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and what comes to me when you say that, like the learning to buck you off, I think it's not from a place of like, yeah, like a predetermined plan or whatever, but from like, I think the perspective that like Kathy Sierra might potentially bring into it is I have to get you off in order to get away from whatever is like, I don't believe that I can carry you and still get away from what I'm afraid of. So I got to get you off first so that I can survive. And that's what I love about her methodology is that she kind of trains this like anti-fragility into the horses where she will talk about how she's not that good of a rider and she's not super balanced and yet her horses are balanced underneath her because she offers them all of these tools in order to balance their bodies with a weight that's not going to stay balanced. And I was talking to someone today about this actually because she was like, I really don't want to mess up my horse. Like, I am super crooked and I'm this and that. And her horse actually brought up this energy of like you being crooked in different ways, in variable ways, has made me more resilient. Like, there's a reason why I don't get injured. And you think about all these riders that try to be so quiet, so like you almost like shrink your energy to stay out of the horse's way, your connection with them becomes so fragile and their movement becomes fragile and their ability to move within the movement becomes fragile and it turns into this whole like, you're like riding a glass horse and it shouldn't be like that. Like if your horse was truly balanced in their body and they knew how to balance underneath you, that when the stimulus comes up, more often than not, they're going to say, all right, let's get out of here together. Like they're not going to try to get you off. So I think too, this just reminds me of like kind of conditional love. And I think a lot of us have experienced conditional love or just just conditional like attention. If you think about how like if you get good grades, you're a good kid and you get loved and praised for that and you get rewarded. If you get bad grades, you don't. If you are quiet, you're accepted. If you're loud, you get in trouble. Use your inside voice, all that stuff. And I think when people are working with their horses, there really can be this mindset of perform for me in this way, or else like you're getting sold or you're getting sent back, or if you don't do what I ask, I'm going to be frustrated and I'm not going to love you as much. Like you have to, there's this dialogue, um, I think often unintentionally, but very clearly of like, you have to perform in order to receive love. And those same people who feel that way, I think, believe that they have to perform in a certain way in order to, receive love as well.
Yeah. I think that's most humans at some level. And it can be also translated as like if I have to be this version of me to, have connection, to have safety, to have my needs met, to have all the things. And I think what people forget is there's like this resilience that comes from that, and people want to, like you said, shrink down and do all the right things and not mess their horse up. Where I'm like, well, all the mistakes and all of the things that happen that are hard is what creates resilience, and what create like you're not going to stop the human experience. You're not going to stop the horse experience. Like, this is what we fucking signed up for. And I was reading something that someone had posted, and they were talking about, you see all these people talking about nervous system regulation. And it's like, yeah, that's great if you can regulate your nervous system, but we're not meant to stay regulated all the time. Like, no one, like, to be able to be in stressful situations and have hard things happen and then be able to re-regulate yourself back down in that moment is that space where you can create the resilience. I think it's the same thing for the horses, physically and mentally and emotionally, where it's like if you're not pushing those limits and trying new things and being willing to make a mistake and not think, oh my gosh, I'm going to destroy everything we've created because there's been this mistake, then you don't really get the experience of that expansion, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, and that's where it's our responsibility too to understand at least the basics of the nervous system. So that way we have tools in our toolbox to know, like, when your horse is intrinsically motivated by something and when you're pushing them over threshold.
Hmm.
Because those can, like, I feel like there's such a thin line between those. And the other thing that's kind of like coming up for me too is like the horses want us or need us to accept all parts of them, and they're one of the like biggest conditional things that we create within our horses is like we find a version of them that feels really safe to us. So we like the steady trail horse, we like the horse that can go into an arena with other horses and perform well, we like the calm versions, whatever version of them that you feel keeps you the safest. You love that version, you nurture that version, and there's almost like this rejection of the other parts. And horses will bring up to me in sessions all the time where like there has to be an interweaving of all of it. Like you can help them regulate their nervous system, completely down regulate their nervous system, get them into like a nice, soft, like sleepy energy. But then you also have to be able to call up that like dragon within them and
Yeah.
know that you can feel safe next to them in doing so. They feel safe within their bodies so that they can explore all of those ranges, because as soon as they get into a certain space, like they are non-predatory, like they're flight animals, so they're going to get there at some point. And if you've never even touched it because it scares you or you're worried that it's going to bring up something old, it's so interesting because I feel like a lot of people that I talk to, they're worried about bringing their horses up again because they've associated like a story around what it means for them to be up. And a lot of times it's like not even the current horse that they're with. It's like our nervous system living in the past. So yeah, I think it's really important that we interweave like both of those things, and we're not like rejecting or constantly trying to stay away from like that power within them. Like that
Mm-mm.
power is who they are.
Yeah. I think people are afraid of that within themselves. And because you are kind of shamed for that growing up, or within, your family or relationships or whatever it is, where you're kind of being toned down and shut down, and people get worried about it. They get worried about like those big expressions, and I just remember there's horses that have come in, and one mare in particular whose body was in such dysfunction, and I use the round pen, and I try to explain to people it's not like traditional like round penning. It's like I'll take them in and just sort of put pressure on and see where we're at. Like, what is your relationship to this pressure? Like, do you want to shut down and suck back? Do you want to explode forward? And I remember she had all of this fire in her. She just wanted to just like, here I am. And you could feel it, right? But she was like, it was like she just looked like she was going to explode at any moment, but she wasn't going to. She just went around like that. Like, that's how her body was. And when I first brought her in and I'd pushed her on the round pen, she was like, quote unquote, perfect. Like, she did everything exactly when I told her to. And I was like, this is so interesting. And I talked to her owner, and she's like, oh, well, this is what we do. Usually I keep her on the lunge line, and every time she wants to run forward, I shut it down. Right? So she had all of this like energy that needed to be released, but she was stuffing it back in her body, and her body was in such dysfunction because of it. So there was no, and a lot of horses are just in stalls, or they get like really short turnout, or they are in really small turnouts. So this was the case with her. She was just very bubble wrapped, and then because she had gotten hurt a few times, they didn't want any type of movement that was outside of like walk, trot, canter, perfect. And so I looked at her and I was like, and then she had a lot of correlation between her body and the horse's body and her own way of living. It was interesting because she was Asian, grew up very traditional, like in a traditional household, very good, very quiet, very, um, and so when I told her, I said, I'm gonna let her express herself, and if that makes you uncomfortable, here is your practice, and your work is to stay regulated as best you can, or support yourself while it's happening, because she's never going to be sound. And it took nothing. It was like, she's just out there and it's like a couple kisses and tap, 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 and they're just like all like unleashed. Okay. So I don't let them tear around the round pen until they fall over sideways. I let them have an expression, and I'll do a pattern interrupt, and then I will cut them off, let them go the other way. But there's never me with the energy of shut that down. Like, just let it out. Like, tell me all the things that you've been wanting to say for however long this has been happening, and then I'll stop them and let them like, and then I will help them co-regulate in between and call it up and down and up and down. That horse in like a 20-minute, 30-minute session completely changed the way she moved around the round pen. Just because like her body was like, oh, thank God, like I've been stuffing that. And it's very similar to being in something where either you have to be someone you're not, with a friend, a relationship, family member, whatever, and you're boxing yourself in and you're shutting yourself down, and then all of a sudden it's like you just can't anymore and it all explodes out. Like, it's the same idea, like that stuff will make you sick. So it's like a fine balance of staying in a way where there's like a healthy place where somatically you can go play. For humans, it's like, are you working out? Like, are you using your body? Like, how can you disperse this energy at the same time mentally working through the stuff? The horses are the same thing. Like, do they have an environment where they get to go express themselves freely without you intervening and stopping them and bubble wrapping them and shutting them down? It's like all that stuff is like completely determining whether or not they stay sound. And it is the upregulation that I think people get afraid of, whether they're afraid it's going to get too big and they won't be able to shut it down, and they'll get scared, they'll get hurt, or the horse will hurt themselves, whatever it is. Mind you, I have a very safe round pen. I have good footing. I have all the things, and sometimes people don't have access to that stuff. So that's where that whole other thing comes in, where like, yeah, it's not like a general statement, but that is
Mm-hmm.
what they need.
Yeah, movement is medicine. Well, we'll encourage whoever's listening to this to see what's coming up for you and how it feels in your body, to think about calling up your horse's energy if they're like in their full power. When they're Fern's favorite thing is to like go to the end of the arena, and like if I walk away from her, she'll be like, I'm not looking. And then all of a sudden she'll just like
Just
gallop up
bolt.
to me as fast as she can, and she like bolts. She acts like something spooks her and she just bolts over, and she comes like straight for me, and then she kind of like skids to a stop right in front of me. And I think like there's got to be tools in place for yourself to where you feel safe and to know your horse. Like, I wouldn't do that with Kip. I would have some sort of protected contact with Kip because Kip likes to spin and kick. And so I know that someone's going to be listening to this and they're going to be like, oh, yeah, it's all great and fine. Like, Amber's a horse trainer. She can call those things up in her round pen, but that's just not a reality for me. Like, I'm too scared. But don't let your story like ruin your try before you even get there, because it could end up being the most fun experience that you've ever had with your horse. And it could be something like kicking a yoga ball or a pool noodle or just like something fun. Like, it doesn't have to be running them around or getting them into like this crazy rear or whatever. Because I
There
think a
is
lot of
like, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think a lot of people worry about their horses rearing. Like, that's like a big
Mm.
fear. At least in like in my clientele, they will be like, well, if I call that up, like my horse, I don't want them to kick me, or like my horse gets really light on the forehand and stuff. And like, there's just ways that you can do it where you both feel safe, but like the fear keeping you from that, like that creative energy, is just gonna manifest as pain in the horse anyway. So like, it's worth exploring it.
Yeah. And there's I just keep wanting to say microdoses of it, which I don't know if that's the correct thing to say, but it's you create a boundary first, right? Like that's the first thing I sort of establish before I even let them off to do that. So there are steps up to the point where I let them go in the round pen. And for me, it's easy for me to establish a boundary with a horse. So for people that are like, I want to work on calling up the energy, but I want to do it in a way where I don't feel like I'm in danger. So my nervous system can also be expanded with them. And it's as easy as starting with just making sure that you can like tap the whip on the ground or swing the rope and have them step away from you. And then down regulate at the end of the rope and walk faster with them next to you while keeping a boundary, or then trotting with them, or yeah, having something in front of you like a pool noodle or a ball that you're kicking. And when they go up, allow them to, and then you can reset back down. Like the titration of the nervous system, the up and down, the like, whoo, I feel that adrenaline. Can I regulate back down right away? Like, can I? That's what creates that resilience within the nervous system. And it doesn't have to be like a big explosion thing in the round pen. Establish your boundaries first in a way that feels really safe to you and slow, and then build on it up into that point. So then you can have the big stuff, and you can know I can always go back to they can do all these things, but they're not going to come on top of me to do it.
Hmm.
And Flirt sometimes he's spicy comes in and he like will jump up and like spin. He did this the other day and I have been kicked by him. He was the last horse that actually kicked me. And I have video of him of it because he was like it was raining and all the horses were playing and I was like, oh, this video is so fun. And he sees me, he's like, hey, and he comes like running up to me and I was like, hey, and I like pet him and then someone set him off from like on the other side. He's like, yeah, and he just like turned around and like kicked out. It's like so it's like
Yeah.
shit happens. That was my fault. Like I just, I know that's who he is, and sometimes he just gets. He wasn't kicking at me. I mean, I was wrong place, right time, but wrong
Oh,
place, right time.
damn.
That's interesting.
That's
Wrong place, right
interesting.
time. I wonder what that's about that I said that. But you know what I mean? So do it in a way where you're not sending yourself into a panic because that's not actually allowing them to go up. If you go up with them, that's not the thing. You have to be able to stay grounded in that when they are up in order for them to feel safe to be fully expressed and called up because you know that you have the ability to have the boundary and call them back down because you can do that for yourself, which is why I have the owners work on it on the outside of the round pen on their own. You know what I mean? Like I can control the situation, but that can still bring the stuff up for them and they can work on it separately. And then I bring them together to do it eventually.
Yeah, that's why I think we always talk about, the importance of people finding their neutral because if you don't know what your neutral is, if you are not self aware, it's really hard for you to trust yourself in those moments. So you end up not doing things with your horse or you shut them down or whatever because there's an old story or there's a fear and you can't really see past the fear in order to um, get to the other side. So finding your neutral on your own, understanding your limits and understanding your horse's limits. And the more that you're able to kind of I feel like you can only know your horse to the capacity that you know yourself. So the more you do the self discovery, then you can, and honestly, just spending time with your horse or watching them out in the field. Like with Kip, if I see him out in the field, he does some ninja moves and he will make contact with other horses. And so I know damn well that if I get him too amped, like he's gonna probably make contact with me. I see Fern charging the other horses all the time. She loves to lead them up from the back and charge around. So, and then there's Chico, who is like but he would never kick. He bites, he will strike out, but like he won't kick. So he's one that I get all amped up and he will get all crazy and I can just kind of like stand there because it's not characteristic of him to kick. So knowing your horse and like what you can call up is important, but I think the biggest piece that we were kind of trying to bring to light is like not rejecting that part of them, whatever that means for you, not rejecting the out of fear. And if you are rejecting that, just dig around in there and maybe question why it worries you so much. And if it's an old experience, because our horses, they get held so accountable by old experiences that like aren't even theirs, or especially with other horses. Like I have horses all the time that are like, Oh, yeah. Like, this is a bay horse. Like, this is the energy of a bay horse that's being put onto me. And the person's like, oh, yes, that's my horse before them. It was a very tragic thing. And the horse is like, it has nothing to do with me. So, doing that inner work where you're like, how can I meet my horse where they're at? And also keeping everyone safe and stuff like that is so important. But, um, I think the other piece that's important too is like remembering that we aren't entitled to them. That great awakening piece, like we're not entitled to their state of being, their emotions, their movement. And so, um, how do you feel actually, like, because sometimes where there's clarity, there's assertiveness, but I think that's kind of a fine line too. Like when you're assertive and you're asking for something, I guess it goes back to knowing yourself and knowing what you're rooted in and where your nervous system is. That way, when you're asserting yourself with your horse, you know if it's coming from a place of, oh God, you scared me, I'm moving you away, versus like, hey, do you want to try this?
Yeah, it is such a tricky thing because it's such an individual thing. And even me having knowing all this, I started working my horses again. I might even start documenting that. I haven't touched them for quite a while, quite a while. I mean, I see them and I touch them every night when they come in for dinner and pick the feet and stuff, but I started actually bringing them into the round pen and doing some body work and stuff. And I told Shayleigh, I was like, my chest is so tight when I worked this horse, and then I switched to the next horse, and my stomach was in knots, and I was like, I don't know what that was about. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me. And then I realized just randomly, my intuition kicked in, like, it wasn't you. And I was like, oh, because I did nothing before that. Usually, what used to happen is I would be in a place where I would be super regulated, knew what my neutral was, knew where I was at that day, literally did what I tell people not to do. But instead, I was like, oh, I have some time. I'm going to go work the horses. And so I didn't even have the ability to figure out that, oh, that wasn't actually me. It was them. Like, it was them, like, oh gosh, why are we in the round pen? What's going to happen? This is not the norm. We've been wild feral horses in the pasture. Why are we here? And so there was a little bit of anxiousness on their part, a little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of like, what's going to happen? And I thought it was me. I was like, why am I like this? And I realized, oh, it wasn't me, it was them. And I was not even tapped in enough to realize that that was, their experience, and I was feeling into it. And that is something that I know that I do all the time with people and with horses. If I'm not conscious of it, I'm a mess. And it is tricky sometimes. But it's that, like, feeling that and going, okay, how can I create more safety right now when I feel this uncertainty in you? And we're not, there's some reassurance that can happen. I didn't ask for very much. I was just like, can you just soften your big stiff body? Like, can we move a little bit? Like, nothing crazy is going to happen today. So I feel like feeling that uncertainty in them, it's like the what we are talking about before, of not pushing past like that threshold. Like, I felt the uncertainty rise in them, and even though I wasn't recognizing it in the moment, I knew what I was going to do was nothing big that day, but they didn't. What I wouldn't have done if I was feeling that is go, okay, now I'm going to go put the saddle on you and we're going to go do a bunch of stuff. It was like that, yes, potentially could have created a problem. I'm not going to go so far when I'm feeling into that it creates this big explosion. It's like, can I push right up against the discomfort, and then can I let you know that actually nothing terrible happened? It was quite easy and you were fine and I was fine and everything was safe. And they were like, oh, and then I went out yesterday to shoot a couple of videos and they were just like, oh, hi, you again. And they were just all over me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot how fun you guys were. Um, but it was like that, if I had done it, quote unquote, right, I would have been more balanced and neutral, realized that that was coming from them. Even though I still didn't really push them past threshold, it's not what I typically do. I do bump right up against it. I'm not going to have them completely snap in half and melt down and need to fight or try to get away from me. It's it's just noticing when there is that tension and going right up against it and just marinating in it for a minute, and then like backing off and letting them go, oh, okay. Like, you aren't going to just bulldoze over how I'm telling you I'm feeling right now. Um, it's kind of like that practice that I started doing in before all of my meditations, where I have people hold their breath and relax their body at the same
Hmm.
time.
I
And
like
I'm like,
that.
hold your breath until you are uncomfortable and stay relaxed. And it's such a crazy thing to start to do, because you realize, like, oh, I can be uncomfortable and I can be safe. And something happens to your nervous system when you do that. I should do an entire breathwork thing around that. That might be fun. Um, but there's something that happens when you do that. And it's kind of what I feel like I'm doing with them. It's like you can be in this discomfort because there's going to be a lot of uncertainty in your life. I want to prepare you for that. I don't know what's going to happen at the other side of the vineyard if we're riding or if a truck's going to go, banging down the road. I want you to feel the rise of energy and know I can be safe in this. And also I can bring myself right back down after I realize that the potential threat is gone. And I think if you don't let them go up like their nervous systems and our nervous systems are supposed to, that's when you're kind of creating those problems. So it's like okay for them to feel that. And why I think it's important to bring their energy up like that is because that is they when they feel that they don't panic. You know what I mean? It's like that's that expansion of their ability to hold that, the pressure and the uncertainty of things that like pop up without them. If they never feel it and then something happens, then typically it goes into a crazy spiral of like they cannot. And so then you're trying to manage that, which is much scarier, which is what I think most people think is going to happen because they are not building it slowly. They're just going straight into like, let me quote unquote desensitize you. I'm gonna flap this tarp around, until which is totally takes most horses over threshold. And you just stay doing it until they have to disassociate and shut down. And then people are like, winning. My horse
Yeah.
isn't afraid of tarps anymore. I'm like, yeah, until the sixth or seventh time something happens and the tarp and something else blows down the road and it pokes their little bubble that they've been stuffing and then there's a huge explosion and then people go, I don't know, it's just out of nowhere. I was like, no, that was not out of nowhere. You put that in there. You put that there.
I know, it's so true. We do put a lot of the things in there. That's why I love doing stuff at Liberty. I think that more people need to do stuff at Liberty because even just something as simple as like saddling your horse, because what I've noticed with my horses is I'll start out at Liberty and they'll like work with me, and if they disengage, if I put the halter and lead rope on, they know that they like can't get away, or they know that like the halter and lead rope means that they're gonna like quote have to do what I want them to do essentially. And they become very like compliant. Like my horses will be like, "Oh, you caught me. All right, I've got to pick up my feet. I've got to do this." But like if you do it at Liberty and you give them choice, like sometimes you'll go put the saddle pad up and they're like, "Nah, not right now," and they'll walk away. Or and it's so fascinating because I encourage a lot of Liberty stuff with my clients, and I don't think people really do it, because it pushes up against all the, you have a story, like you want to come out to the barn, ride your horse, or work with your horse. And if you go out 3 days in a row doing Liberty and they walk away every single time, then you got a big hole in your training plan, or your relationship or whatever. And I remember, so like speaking to the piece of like you have to be able to bring them up and bring them back down from like a grounded place. Well, for a very long time, I was not grounded because I like suppressed my emotions a lot. And so Kip and I would like just go up together all the time. But there was, I don't know, the universe like gifted me with that being because we would go up together and Kip would be like at his worst and I'd be at my worst and we'd like survive together. Like we would just do our, because the universe is like, you got a lot of work to do in this lifetime. Like we're going to pair you with a horse that's going to take care of you even when you're in total shit show. So, what's funny though is I quit wanting him to be compliant. Like he's so perfect. He will do things for me to the detriment of his body. And I didn't recognize that before I started doing all this inner work. And now I recognize that. Like I'm like, oh, he's not always willing, he's just compliant. So I started doing like a lot of Liberty work with him, like starting a couple years ago. And it was so funny what it brought up in me, like where he would disengage and I'd like feel the anger like rise up in my body, or like the frustration. I'd be like, oh, this is so annoying, like I'm not even asking, like how do you want to go over there when I have like snacks for you, or what, push up against whatever. And it was in those moments that I realized that like as a kid my anger would get something taken away from me. Like my
Mm.
mom used to take the door off of my
Oh yeah,
room,
me too.
or she would, yeah, or she'd take like the comforter off my bed so I only had a sheet, or
Oh
like,
no, that's
yeah. She
horrible.
one time I literally had nothing, like nothing in my drawers, no, like it was my whole bedroom got taken away, and I would make her so mad because I'd be like, "Fine, fuck it. I don't care. Like
I'm a Taurus.
I'll live in here." Yeah, exactly. It's like total tourist. I'll just sneak out my window, okay? So but I learned to suppress all that because then it was just easier. Like the more I started, because she would hold my horse over my head. She'd be like, "Well, I'm
Mm,
gonna
yeah,
sell your
that's why.
horse."
That is what happens. I know people are like, "Oh yeah, I had a horse when I was young," and I was like, "Oh, how did that manipulate your experience?" Because they will use
Seriously,
that shit as a leverage. I remember
dude.
one time I got grounded, and and my mom had horses, so she could go out and take care of my horse, which she probably really enjoyed, honestly, for being so for real. And I just remember the like agony in my soul knowing that I had to stay home and she was gonna go touch my horse. I was so angry. I don't remember what I did. I probably deserved it. I think it was only one time that she did it, so it was probably valid. But I just remember it being like, oh my God. But it was always the horse. We're not gonna go get you see your horse. And I mean, I
Yeah.
guess do what you gotta do as a parent.
That's what it was for me too. She could take my phone, she could ground me, she could do anything. As soon as she started threatening, that fueled my anger so hard that I like got a job at a construction company when I was 14 and saved up like a grand over the summer and bought round pin panels, and I was like already thinking of like, all right, how am I going to take care of this horse on my own because you're never going to hold that over my head again. Like that's not like this is not. And then I had two jobs all through high school. Like I was obsessed with like providing for my horses. And what's fascinating is I've been working through my fear of loss that I've kind of had anchored in like different ways. And it always goes back to horses. Like if I have loss in X way, I need to know like how I can provide for my horses or whatever. And so it goes back to me, it goes back to the conditional love of do what I say or else the thing that you love most, I'm going to take that away from you. And like we do that with people, like do what I say, I'm taking you away from your herd, the thing you love most, or I'm going to withhold food, or I'm going to continue to push you or whatever. Um but I started that story because I recognized that it was much easier for me to so in I used to have like explosive outbursts and I'd be like, "Fine, you know, whatever." Slam my door, then I get my door taken off. And so I kind of got smart and I was like, if I suppress all this and channel it into doing something, that's going to make a difference for me. So then I was like, I'm going to work. I'm going to like meet people. I'm going to. So then I got my horse boarded at this place that my mom wasn't paying for because I was like working for it and stuff. Um but that was like a way to suppress the way I was feeling. I just channeled it into something else, but it still existed there. So then when I started doing Liberty work with Kip and he wasn't meeting my conditions, and you know what I think is interesting? I feel like we take on the mother role, like whatever was done to us as kids, we kind of take
Mm.
that on and project it like onto like our kids or our animals or whatever. And so I recognized that I was doing that where I was like, do what I say, or I am going to put the halter and lead rope on you or whatever. And I would feel that. And it was you actually that got me into because you would do those somatic, you need to do another like somatic journey
I know, I
because
had
I
that thought
listen
the
to
other
like
day,
the
actually.
same ones and I'm like, all right, I've worn this one out. Like I've listened
Oh
to it too
no.
many times. But I would go into my arena and I would listen to that. And like if you guys have ever done a somatic journey with Amber, she has you like feel into your body at first, and you have to do like this breath, and she like reminds you to like kind of stay with it. And then before you know it, you're like, ah, like you're literally like screaming and shaking. And so I would have Kip in the arena and he would just be eating grass on the side and I'd be like slamming my fists into the ground and like shaking my body and do all these things and like every once in a while he'd like look over at me and just be like, "Ah, thank God. Like thank God you're doing that." And it was fascinating because after I was able to like bring myself up, then towards the end of it, because she guides you through this whole thing, then by the end of it, she brings you back up again. And it's like what she says she does with the horses. She brings you back up again and then back down. And you are more centered within that. Like you call up the energy, but you're like, oh, this is why it's here. And my horse will come and like stand over me towards the end, and he's like here for it. So it's actually really fascinating how um, I think probably most of us have suppressed, like, we're told that we're not allowed to scream, cry, whatever. And so we really do suppress that. And then it's even harder for the people that are at boarding barns that can't, like, flail around and do all the things. But they could, like, if they did one of your journeys, they totally could in their own time and just call in the energy of their horses. I think that's another thing people hold themselves away from. Um, because they think that it has to be done with their horse and they're not in the right environment, but like their energy is energy, like they're connected to you.
Yeah. And I feel like it's in within those journeys, like the movement and the whatever that builds up for horses and people, it's like I think people think that that's always going to be there. I'm like, no, sometimes we've suppressed it so much that once you do let go, it all comes out and you don't get to that level again. You know what I mean? And unless you've had like multiple experiences where things were stressful, you've fallen into old patterns and all of a sudden you're like, oh, here it comes again. But it's like it's like like plunging, plunging you out, it's just like clear it out. So yeah, but some people actually in my other group, we had a call and there were a couple of people that we can't get there. It's too much. And I actually just
Mm.
shut down and I avoid it. So I'm going to do a more mild, shorter version that starts a little slower where you're just like some people can't even like expand their body and like shake their hands. Like that was too much, which I thought
They're
was
like in
super
a
interesting.
major functional freeze.
Yeah, and so there, I think I'll add, a lower tier for the people that want to like break into it, because sometimes you do have to ease into it if you've been in that way for so long, and it can feel scary to you to actually let go because you don't know what's going to be on the other side, until you do it, and you're like, oh, thank God, I feel great.
Yeah. Those are the animals that look like super foot and body sore, and they'll be like, "Oh, well, we hoof tested him and he didn't really react to it, but he's still super stiff." And like they're just like kind of in that functional frozen state. Sometimes they're in like that sluggish state. So, yeah. What a great conversation. So much in here.
Yes. If you guys
Well,
like
that's
this
some deeper
episode,
thought.
huh?
Hmm.
I was going to just tell people if they like this episode, they need to share it. If there's anything in here
Oh,
that
yes, please.
resonated, freaking post it, please. Help us out, like it, share it, follow us, do all the things. Um, we just did a betrayal webinar, which was more focused on self-betrayal.
Hmm.
And it was really freaking good, actually. And we have made the replay available. So if you guys want to dive into that, it kind of feeds into a little bit of that, feeling into the boundaries of I want to express myself and I can't, or I don't think I can, and I didn't. That's little micro self betrayals and how it affects your horses and your animals and the people around you and your own physical body. So, kind of dove into all that and did a little process in there too. So, there's a little workbook and all the things with it. If you guys want it, go ahead and we'll put it in the show notes for you, and you guys can dive in a little bit.
Yeah. Let us know the answers to some of your questions if you've thought about this, if you have your own experiences. We want to hear your thoughts. So let us know in the comments. All
All
right.
right.
Have a great day.
Bye.